me today, I've got Daniel, who's going to share a near-death-like experience with us. Daniel, thanks for joining me. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. I'm kind of been trying to collect my thoughts thinking about sitting here today. It's been a little bit of a challenge because
That's
it's
okay.
been so long ago. It's been 2016 since it happened, but it's something I rarely talk about. So should I just sort of start?
Yeah, you are free to start at whatever point you feel is most relevant to the story, and the floor is yours.
Okay. So back in 2016, I was a pretty big Radiohead fan at the time. And it had been a while since they dropped an album. Their previous album was The King of Limbs. And at one point, they killed their entire social media platform. This is like a few years before Taylor Swift did the exact same thing. And the whole fans were sort of panicking, excited. And then like a day or two later, this is several years ago, and I didn't go back and do a bunch of research before this, but their Instagram had one tweet of a bird, and it was a preamble to a music video for the first single on their album, Burn the Witch. Um, then a couple of days later, they dropped the music video for Daydreaming. And when the music video for Daydreaming dropped, I hadn't slept for close to 3 or 4 days at the time, and I was trying to work on a project writing. I'd worked in Los Angeles for many, many years on film and TV, and I was just about to hit the big 30. And my goal in my career was to do something big with my 30, write that script I always wanted to, or direct that movie I always wanted to, the big 30 ego trip, where you say, like, by the time I'm 30, I'm going to do something important with my life, especially when you're in a creative environment. So my favorite band drops this album, and I've already listened to the first single, and the second single drops, and it's accompanied with a music video directed by Paul Thomas Anderson, Boogie Nights, The Master, a bunch of other great films. There Will Be Blood. And at one point in the music video, and it's this very sleepy, dreamlike pianos, very soft violins, almost whispering, singing. And at one point in the music video, Tom York, the lead singer of the band Radiohead, winked at me, or I thought he winked at me. Like he was like intimately connected with me through the television we were watching the music video on. Like, I don't know if you remember the 90s movie It, where the guy's flipping through the picture book and it winks directly at him. It was like he was looking directly at me. And in that moment, um, a weird spark happened. I felt like I'd been injected with a bunch of adrenaline, like I'd been drinking. So after I elaborate on this long event as best to my memory, people will ask the question, were you on any drugs, et cetera, et cetera. The hospital, when I woke up later, had taken my blood. They never gave me the results back. But all I did that morning was I drank a Corona beer, and I took like one bong hit and watched a music video because I was living in LA. I had my green card at the time. That's something I've done a million times since and a million times before. But I guess this particular time watching this music video, I had something trigger in my head, and adrenaline rushed through me. And at that point, I thought I could build a time machine, like actually design and build a fully functional time machine. And I ran up to my roommate, who was a writer and writing at the time. He lives in Mobile now. And I knocked on his door, and I said, I think I figured out how to build a time machine. You're never going to believe it. And then I think I made up a rap song about whatever, because I'd been listening to Immortal Technique a lot at the time. And I was like, I think I figured out everything, like how the universe is interconnected. It was this big ego thing, but I thought that I could build a time machine. I went to the small diner down the street. I called my brother, and my mind just kept swimming and swimming and swimming. I was like, I have an identical twin brother. So he's exactly me genetically, but he was living in Mobile at the time. He still is. And I'm living in Los Angeles at the time. And I call him, and I realize there's a thread. There's two genetic equals on opposite sides of the country, and they're literally in different time zones. I'm actually currently talking to you in a different time zone, similar to the one I was talking to him back then. And I thought, I could get all this money and ideas, and I could connect on like Google and everything that's tracking everything, and get them all to interconnect this network, and I could recreate the time I had made the phone call with my brother, and then all the recordings and things I'd done digitally through the entire day. That was an initial concept. And I tried to explain it to my brother over the phone, and I was kind of blathering about it as much as I am now. So I thought, well, I don't have any money, I don't have any capital, and when you have a manic episode, every synapses and thoughts and history of memory is just shooting. And um this wasn't like a regular thunderstorm. This was like a class 5. The city is gone after this in my mind. Um, and I thought of years ago, the James Randi Educational Foundation, I think, had a contest that if you can prove magical abilities, they give you $1 million. And I thought, well, I don't know how to prove magical abilities, but I can create the world's greatest magic trick and trick people into thinking I have them to get the $1 million to use it as capital to fund a time machine. So it starts to become a long, drawn out fever dream at this point because I'm no longer lucid. Um, I'm currently in Van Nuys at this point. I've walked from my apartment to a diner just a block down the street on a phone call with my brother that in reality probably took 20 minutes. And then I went and sat down, I think in my car, and woke up in like a desert, like a completely empty desert. The city of Van Nuys is missing. And I called my brother and I said, I don't know what's happened, but I think I'm dead. And I think you helped me build a time machine. And I had a long conversation with him in an abandoned car, not my car, in a desert. And then at some point, I woke up back in my apartment, and my roommate's in the living room at the time. And he says, you look kind of flushed. You look like you haven't slept. Let's get some food in you. I was like, nah, I haven't ate. I had like a beer and all that, but like I just felt full and energetic. And I'd been typing and typing and typing the night before. Um, and at one point, prior to being back in the living room, I think I drove around and dropped off like packages and things to random people. But my roommate drove me out to the beach, a beautiful beach called, I can't remember the name of the beach, but there's a private beach that when it's like May or February, it's not very crowded and it's very peaceful. So he drove me up there because he could see I was losing my head. By this point, the album I think he dropped that day, and we went to the beach. And when I arrived there, I thought I was inside a computer at first. Like I went from dying to being like reincarnated, but in the next life, but still in my memory of my previous life. And I was like in like an alien ship, that the aliens are more like, in Interstellar where they're all vague and they're all weird. Um, and like this girl waved at me on the beach, and I waved like 10 seconds before she waved, like it was almost everything was perfectly in sync. And I laid my head in a crevice under the rocks, and I started walking up the beach, and I went into a porta potty. And in my mind, I was only in there for like 5 or 10 minutes. But I had also woken up on a talk show promoting my time machine in the porta potty. Like I just lost it. And I woke up um, on a talk show being like, I've invented this time machine. It works really well. And then I woke up back in the porta potty, like snapping back from reality to dream. Um, and I walked out of there, and my roommate had told me I had been in there for like an hour and a half crying. And I have no memory of that. I have memory of only a little piece of it he drove me back home, and he played actually the song that I was listening to when you sent the thing, a song called Glass Eyes, on the road trip back. And there's a tunnel leading back to Los Angeles from this beach, a big wide brimmed tunnel, and all the cars started looking white. And I was like, okay, maybe I actually did die. And all this extra stuff was just a fever dream of my brain, just being like, brace yourself, you're moving on, you're going into the tunnel. And all these white cars, and like, these must be the other souls. And this song is, they have bombastic to peaceful to bombastic on the record. So it's one of these peaceful songs. And as I'm driving through there, I felt like Tom's voice, not actually him, was sort of like a rope leading me and pulling me to the next side. And I could hear it because he's got a very high pitched voice. As the pitch like gets higher while he's singing, we're going up through this tunnel, and right as it breaks, we breach. I'm like, oh, I'm there. I'm on the other side of life. And my roommate stops at a diner. He's like, "You need food." It's my favorite diner, the North Hollywood diner, in Burbank. We stopped there. I have one bite of a cheeseburger. I don't think I've ate for like 3 days at the point. And then we get back to the apartment, and I decide to take a bath, which I do from time to time when I'm stressed out. I was like, I'm stressed. And he's like, okay, this is smart. He's gonna take a bath and relax. So my roommate went and got on the computer, went to the restroom downstairs, or went and got a sandwich. She thought I'd be in there for hours because I used to take like long, hour-long baths, listen to music. But I got out in about 5 minutes, slapped my clothes on, and ran outside the door. And I was starting to see more and more and more and more things. Um, there was a point I had a walking stick at the time. So I used to work on the Tonight Show with Jay Leno, years and years and years ago. And one of the prop managers, when the show had ended, the show had ended about 2 years prior, or a year and a half prior to this. So all of the memory of working on it was still fresh. And my father had died almost a year prior to this happened, about a year and a couple of months. But one of the prop man has gave me a stick. They had a segment on the show called Things That Look Like Jay Leno. So somebody would send in a potato or a Tostados chip.
I remember
Mhm.
that.
Yeah. And I had a cane. Whatever episode had the walking cane. The walking cane subsequently got broken, but the head of the cane looked like Leno, but it just looked like a face with some personality to it. And I was walking Van Nuys. I think it was shirtless. Like, I just put on my pants after getting out of the bath. And I was walking through traffic because I couldn't really see the traffic. Van Nuys at night, which is not the safest part of LA. There's actually a gang that run our neighborhood. I won't say their name on the show, but it was scratched all over the area. If you go near where the airport shuttle is, you'll know who it is. If they're still there. But I walked around with this cane, and I felt like I was a wizard, like Gandalf holding the cane. And I lifted it high above my head, and I hit the ground with it and snapped the whole thing in half. And I swear I saw lightning just shoot out. So at this point, I thought I had been like reincarnated as a wizard. And I'm walking through Van Nuys, and that idea starts to dissipate. A million other ideas start coming through. Did the time machine work? Am I lost in like a time loop? Like, in Bill and Ted, they're writing the time thing, and there's all that extra stuff out. Like, what if they slip out of a phone booth and then they're just fumbling around in some chaotic other world? So I thought that's where I was at this point. And I've got a visual aid. So when I was a kid, I had a small gray stuffed animal, and it gotten ripped up. And then, as kind of a gag, my mom bought me one years and years and years ago. And I've kept it around my house, and it's been in closets, and now we just keep it at the house as like our mascot. Me and my fiance have a bunch of stuffed animals and things. But this creature here, my childhood stuffed animal, which was actually in a closet back home at my mom's house, begins talking, walking, and taunting me, just creeping behind people, random people in Van Nuys, California, suburban mailboxes, and like telling me to sneak into the house. Like, so I was about to break into somebody's house, and I didn't know it because I could hear people in the house, but my mind thought that I knew them and I was at a familiar neighborhood and that there was a party of people I knew. Later on, I found out that like they're not people I knew. But my stuffed animal is running around Van Nuys telling me to go into this house. And by then, my roommate pulls up. He's exhausted because he's been driving around these neighborhood streets looking for a shirtless man with um, a walking stick. And I think he found a piece of the stick that I had broken left on the ground. Um, nearby and then drove past that. He picks me up, takes me back to the apartment, he locks the door, and he keeps just a mad dog stare on me for most of the rest of the night. And then it's gonna end in the next 8 or so hours, but I can sum it up fairly quickly. Most of the night spent in my living room dash kitchen. The apartment had 2 stories, 2 bedrooms at the top, and like a living room area and a kitchen that were connected by a little island you could walk in. I actually like the space; it was super comfortable. Um, and we're hanging out by our couch. At one point, the whole world dissolves. I can't even see Jeff, and it just becomes a desert with a giant lizard licking its lips, and then it becomes the apartment again. And then at one point he disappears, and like my dad, who had been dead for about a year and a half, moderately upsettingly and suddenly, he was like 63 in his apartment, had a heart attack just all of a sudden. I see him and he talks to me as clear as I'm talking to you, except more, I can touch him. And he says, "It's going to be fine. I went through it and it's fine." I said, "Okay." And then I saw in a purple dress the girl I took to prom like 16, 17 years prior to this, who now has passed. She died of breast cancer about 3 years ago. A friend of a friend told me when I moved back home. But at the time this happened, she was still alive. And I think prior to going to prom with me, she went out to one of those little dances a year before and was wearing a purple dress with a friend of mine. I think she was wearing the same dress, which was weird. And I had a conversation with her, and it wasn't even a romantic because we'd been broken up for like 16 years, 15 years at this point. It was like, "Oh, hi, I hope you're doing well," that kind of thing. And then I'd interviewed Dave Brockie a couple of years before this because I'm freelancing while working on the Tonight Show doing gigs and stuff. Dave Brockie was the lead singer of the band Guar for about 30 years ago. He's also passed. And he came into my apartment, but he's a heavy metal guy. And he was as the character Odorous in Spikes and Things. And he was talking about what it was like to be passed. Or maybe he hadn't died at this point. I don't remember actually. No, I think he might have just passed. And he talked to me for a little while, but as the character, not as the man who had died, which was odd. This big monster, he was cracking jokes because that's all he does. And then by this point, I was really getting sleepy and bugged down and strange. My roommate Jeff at the time, he said, "Just touch the tip of my finger, like the ET thing. Just let's hug or touch, and it will ground you." So we did that. And prior to this, if I remember correctly, and can I curse? Do you care if I use curse
No,
words?
yeah, you're fine.
Okay, wonderful. I kept saying those fuckers at the back, those fuckers at the back, because in the apartment, holes, little pinholes would start to appear, and I could see like or hear like little whispery creatures and squirrels like in the walls, but they all had like laser pointers, and they're all just annoyingly like hitting me, and it looked like they were taking little tiny pictures, like thousands of them in the wall. So imagine if there were like rats or cockroaches in your walls, and they all have little laser pointy cameras, and there are thousands of them, and every couple of minutes they just take a picture of your head. Which, funny enough, talking about building a time machine that would be a representation of time, the way they do some mocap stuff is they put people in a cylindrical thing and they take pictures of them. So I was probably feeling that kind of energy, but just creatures. Um, and after the grounding, they all kind of disappeared. I remember one point my roommate had told me, and I remember this very vaguely, that I had ran up and down the stairs in our apartment about maybe 100 times, just like 1,000 times. Like just I was doing like an exercise over and over, and then I screamed from like here to here in his face, and he didn't flinch. I remember him not flinching. He's like, "I might catch you. I might throw you to the ground, but I can tell you're not here." He told me later. He's like, couldn't see me. Like the little white was just gone when I did that. I had spent the next 5 hours just crying in like a puddle, I think on the couch and then on the stairs. And I wasn't feeling much of anything, just like almost 30 years of my life just draining out of me. And then there was a knock on the door, and it was two police officers, and they asked my roommate, has he done any drugs? He's like, no. I mean, I drank a beer and smoked a joint. I told him I'd previously smoked DMT, but I hadn't done that in like 5 years to the point of the story. Like 5 years. From then, I hadn't touched anything but like a bong and a Corona and maybe a Red Bull. Not enough to trigger any kind of anything. They put me in the back of an ambulance, strapped me in. I'd been trying to wish and manifest that my brother would appear. What I didn't know is over the course of these 2 days, him, my mom, and my now sister-in-law all took a plane out to see me and stayed at my apartment when I was in the hospital. So they just grabbed a plane flight and flew out. Thank you. And I'd sat in the hospital bed, strapped there, just on drips. Um, and my I just kept wishing like, can my brother come here? I just want to see him, because I called him. He's the first person I called right as the triggers started to happen. And this little guy walked into the room and introduced him. He's like, your brother is here, and then walked out. And my mom was there, and she started crying, and my stepsister's there, and then this nurse comes to just do blood and routine tests, and she looked like a Cenobite, one of those Cenobites from the Razor movies, all like cut up and stuff. And then I thought, oh shit, I didn't travel to heaven, because there were some pieces of this that were really peaceful, like riding in the ambulance on the way back. I could see like flowers opening. I'm like, oh, they got to strap me down because heaven is overwhelming. I've got to get used to it. And then when I got to the hospital, this Cenobite, creepy looking woman starts taking my blood, and I thought I was in hell. And then I wake up in the hospital. They explained to me that it's a mental hospital. It wasn't a very good one, but I'm not going to say the name of the place or throw it under the bus, because they did put me through some tests that I weren't needed, and they kept me. It's supposed to be when you're on a mental health check. It's supposed to be for a 3-day stay legally. They kept me there for 4 days. So I don't want to mention the place because that's a pretty bad part of my memory. And there are some interesting characters. The first day I was there, I was so completely doped up that I just thought I was in like an arcade or on vacation. Every person in there was such a character that I thought I was like inside of a movie. And it wasn't until the second day that I kind of sobered up a little bit and realized that, oh, I'd been admitted and I had a very serious psychotic break. And I've had manic episodes where I get like nervous and shaky and run around and talk really fast, but I've never seen things outside of like, maybe, you squint your eyes, you can see colors and things, but I've never seen physical, tangible, like shake my dad's hand, walking stuffed animals thing. I spent the next 3 days in the hospital, and then about 9 months after that experience, I moved back to Mobile, Alabama, because I was like, I don't want to die and be away from my family. And I thought I could build up working in films and then move back. And then I just kind of settled here, which is good. I got a nice house and good job, and kind of slid away from all that. But it was a blunt force object of a memory. That's the
Yeah.
most of
So thank you for sharing that. My first question, like I know that you already cleared up that there were no drugs involved or anything like that, but did you ever figure out maybe what did trigger the episode?
The only thing I think was lack of sleep and probably poor diet. I mean, I was eating like random roller things from 7-Eleven and drinking Red Bulls at the time. But it was just a clear, I don't think I slept for an entire week. maybe because I was approaching 30 and it was like, I gotta do something big with my life. And I've already done, I mean, I've worked on an Academy Award winning film. I got to interview a rock star one of the last times before he passed. And, I worked on the Tonight Show for 3.5 years. I mean, I've checked some things off my list. I make hot sauce as a hobby now, just to pour something creative into something that's a bit slower and more meditative. But yeah, other than like my favorite band is dropping a new album, I'm approaching the age of 30 and my dad has just died. I don't know what to do with my life because I was without a job too. And after having a steady job for so long, and then like the show ended because the show was going to end, they gave it to Fallon and I wasn't moving to New York from LA. And then I have this lull in between dad died, turning 30. What am I doing with my life? And then my favorite band in the world that I listened to, the B-sides, everything front to back. We just bought tickets to a concert, 3 concerts actually. Me and my friend Jeff went and saw them at the Shrine Auditorium, drove up to Outside Land in San Francisco, and then back to the Shrine Auditorium. We already had our tickets, I think, at the time this happened. And then I just, with all the excitement and depression and everything, just got headbutted through lack of sleep and like, oh, I love this song. I'm so excited. Just times a million, times a million, times a million, times a million. And it was funny, the very first night of the very first show at the Shrine, I didn't take anything. Like, I think I had a glass of water. And the show started and no triggers. And then we saw them in San Francisco, Radiohead on the album tour. And they played a song called, I think it was Pyramid Song. And I had one of those, like, you ever hear a song and it just hits you full force? And I was like, oh. And then it went away. It didn't stay for like 24 hours. And we went home, and the third show was really great. I think they played Feral, which is a great song. And nothing triggered. And I've seen Tom York perform like 6 or 7 times since then, and I'm gonna see him in 8 days from now in New Orleans. He's got a new band called The Smile, and nothing has, no song, no lyric has emotionally triggered anything close to that. I've had like, ooh, I love this song, I'm feeling this moments, but nothing like I woke up in another reality because of like the song Daydream.
Well, how has it changed your life? Has your life changed since that experience?
Absolutely significantly. I decided that LA wasn't for me. I mean, I need to go back and visit my friends. I love all my friends, and some of the restaurants I love, they're still around. I'll go eat there. But it's so much hustle. It's so much grind. My connections had started moving away, so I felt losing my grip on finding future jobs. And I came back to Mobile, and I wanted to try to work it. When I moved back to Mobile, I worked on Gerald's Game and Get Out. There's a good, successful film shot in Mobile, Alabama. But it's not sustainable here because they come once in a blue moon. It's not a big city. So I just got a regular job and then like a hobby. And then I met my fiance after getting my regular job. And I had a girlfriend at the time, long distance in Mobile, which was one of the gauges to kind of pull me back after this happened. But I feel like my life is more at peace. Like I can control my mania. I met my fiance, who actually introduced me to your show at a meditation center. So I feel like the younger me who just was like, let's drink 50 beers and jump off a roof, um, is gone. And I don't miss much of that kid because he get me really, really hurt now.
Yeah, yeah. Like, see, there's something that I like to talk about a lot of times, a particular type of soul connection that I don't think a lot of people talk about, and the name that I give it is a bump contract. And
Oh, I like that.
yeah, that's when you're basically headed in the wrong direction, and the universe brings somebody into your life to turn you in a different direction, you know? So I'm kind of wondering if I don't know if I would call that a bump contract, but if maybe you were heading in a direction that you weren't supposed to be in for so long, and that was like the universe's way of saying you got to turn around and go the other way, you know? You think,
I
have you thought about that?
I think so. I think that really hardcore, like I'm gonna pimp my hobby right now. So I started making hot sauce, and everyone I've given it to seems to really, really like it. But like I worked on this interview with the lead singer of Guar for almost 9 years, and there was a Blu-ray coming out, and then like at last minute, the releasing company dropped it. This is a few months ago, and I don't want to kind of giving up hope on my entertainment industry dreams. And that just kind of dashed it. I mean, you talked in your show before about the universe giving you signs. When I worked for the Tonight Show, I pitched a joke that got zero laughs. We've gotten boos, we've gotten protests, but we've never gotten a dead reaction that the people that have been writing for the show can remember. And I sold a joke to the show that made it to air, and no one laughed. I have it framed in my guest bedroom. It's just cracks me up. So like I I'm I feel like for me, looking back on my career in the entertainment industry, and I'll use the Twilight Zone analogy, um, that like the entertainment industry is an airplane, and the people that work in it are the stewardesses, the pilots, the director, and then all the people are the passengers. And I, even in that industry, and as hard as I hustled and as many hours as I worked, because I work shoots that are like 20 hours, and met people that work 48 straight building sets. It can get pretty dangerous, entertaining people. And oh crap, I forgot what I was gonna say. Oh, in my metaphor, that they're all like a plane, and I always kind of felt like a gremlin on the wing of the plane, being like, "Can you let me in?" And I just hustled, and I worked for nearly 20 years on it, but I never had that satisfying moment where I like sold an article to a magazine. I did one that was a crappy one, and nobody bought it, and like I won a contest that got something on the DVD, but they didn't crop it right. Like everything I've accomplished just has this little, not so much. Met a lot of wonderful people, but this was like Bane over Batman cracking his back to my psyche, being like, as much as you love movies, making them isn't for you. You need something less bombastic and quieter. So like, I'll fire up the grill, throw some peppers on it, and cooking has been, or making things with my hands has been a lot more satisfying, a lot more slower and meditative.
Yeah, on my journey, I've met and connected with many people who have worked in various places in the industry, and I've heard some firsthand experiences of some things that go on over there that aren't so cool. So I'm wondering
Yeah,
maybe if the universe did you a favor, you know?
I think so. You actually reminded me of something. So I've gone back maybe 3 times. COVID put a long break. It's the longest break it's been since I went and visited my friends. I used to go back like once a year on clock. Oh, my friend's getting married. Cool. I'll stay in LA for a week and visit all my LA people. Or, oh, Halloween party staying. So I just pick random dates. I did that for the first 3 years. And the last time I went back before COVID, when I was getting on the shuttle, there was this skinny, like 17-year-old looking girl, and she had like track marks, like heroin track marks on her arms, very visibly. She was like rake thin, like maybe 90 pounds. And she said, probably Ohio or some middle America town. And she was like, I can't wait to get out of my hometown and move into LA where everybody's so, you know, vibrant and woke and important. And everybody in whatever Ohio, all they want to do is do drugs and sleep with one another. I just wanted to grab her and be like, "Oh, honey, you got to run the other direction. This town is, especially that industry, is not like it." But I've worked in it long enough that you'll work on crappy films, scumbaggy people, and you get like a really good one with people that really, really care. And I wish the whole place was like that. I've seen a bunch of my friends succeed and direct great films and things since then. Buddy of mine worked on a Bowie project recently. It's super proud of. It's awesome, but that kind of persistent commitment and then the BS you have to deal with, I just couldn't slough off a lot of it. I'm like a kid in a candy store out there. I wanted to do everything, and everything is not for me.
Yeah, yeah. I can remember very vividly the last time I went to Hollywood, and I don't even know how to put words behind the energy, but I was like, "Get me out of here," you know? There's just this vibe that I can't put words to. And it's one of those things, I think, that until you've been there and you've felt it, you can't really explain it. Because like what you just
Yeah.
said, like the girl who was from the other side of the country and thought that it was something so amazing, and that's what you always hear. People think that until they get there, and it's like, oh, what is this? You know?
Yeah, and there are amazing things there, which I fixated on, but then you'll trip over 10 crappy things. It's like panning for gold. A lot of it's just crap. I watched, speaking of that icky Hollywood vibe, I was walking through Hollywood one day because like this hot dog place I like was there. So I was getting a hot dog or something. And I watched a family of tourists step over a homeless man to get a picture with the actor pretending to be Spider-Man on Hollywood Boulevard. I felt so sick to my stomach, and I just went home and kind of sulked. I may have like waited for them to leave and be like, "Here's $5. I'll get you a cup of coffee," and then went home and sulked for the day. And it's like my brother went and visited me for like a weekend, and he was like, "That's all I can stand of that city." And my friend Jeff was out there for 2 years. He's like, "Yeah, it's good enough for me." And I was there for like close to a decade, and that kind of time just weighs. But it's weird because since leaving, I've seen other people change careers for the better and just switch and move, and some stay in the industry, but they go from this side of it to that side of it, and it's a world of difference.
Yeah, I've heard a couple of rumors. I don't know because, like I said, it's been 2019 since I've been to Hollywood, but
Mhm.
I've heard a couple of tales here and there that there's not much going on here lately. Have you heard anything about that?
I know there's a great flight, some to Atlanta, some to New Orleans. Now, a lot of clicks and film people in those cities are. Mobile had a little burst for a while, but then I think the governor or the mayor or somebody killed a few tax incentives to de-incentivize film to come here, and then it was harder and harder to get work, and people just started spreading and spreading. But yeah, I think people are spreading and they're realizing like you're in Las Vegas, I'm in Mobile, Alabama, and we're having this conversation. It's going to be on YouTube, and then a million people see it. I think also people are realizing you can film anything anywhere with almost anything, and just some big projects are the land of diminishing returns because you can spend years making a movie, and the sad fact is it could end up, in a Walmart bargain bin. If I keep looking down, the cat's in my lap, begging for my attention. I'm ignoring him for now. Or like some TikTok video could get 22 million, and then your movie you work on for years could just flop, and it's just that's disheartening. Especially I've seen it happen to people where the biggest thing they've ever worked with just falls on its face. And that's disheartening, especially when if you know the person was genuine. It's even worse when it's a genuine person. I've seen a lot of scumbags succeed. I'm really happy when my genuine friends do. It's
Yeah.
just it's dejecting. It's like a gladiator school, but like with art. If that makes sense. I met a few people out there that really. A friend of mine owns a wild art gallery, collects serial killer art and things in Burbank called Hyena. And he's really sort of kept the torch going for like it's okay to be weird, but don't hurt people, as far as I know. But he's gone through some things too. Like that city will just knock it. He's out there surviving. Um, people make the best of the grind. I just decided grinding on down wasn't for me.
Absolutely. Well, I am going to be going ahead and wrapping this up here in a minute. I appreciate for having you on. Was there a positive message that you'd want to share with the viewers before we wrap up?
A positive message. Cherish great music. That's important. Art is a great communicator of ideas. Just use the best of it. That Alan Moore idea of art being able to move things and teach things. But if you ever feel anxious or nervous or like you don't matter or you've got to do something big, you got to do something big to prove something to the world. Like have a cup of coffee, sit in a hot bath, take it really, really slow, and think, do you need to do this? And if you do need to do this, you need to do it that fast because you could hit a wall. And I tried to build a time machine, and part of me still remembers how, and a part of me is still blurred. So I'm probably not going to invent one. Go slower. And I hate to bring back why I love the band Radiohead so much, but there's a song called Go Slowly, and it's really good advice. It's okay to go slowly. This world is trying to be really, really fast. Everything's not TikTok. It's just not.
All right. Well, thanks for coming on and sharing that story. I greatly appreciate you. You have a good day, and I wish you the best.
I wish you the best. Thank you for having me.
No problem. Bye bye.